Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. We have another fantastic episode for you guys today. We are finishing our rookie prospects today, the last one of the April month, and we're going to be talking about wide receivers and tight ends part 2. If you missed our part 1, please go back and watch it. It was a lot of fun. Of course, let's introduce the crew today. Coach Tyler, what's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? We finally made it to draft week.
It's the best week of the year almost, besides the start of football season. And, of course, we have a longtime guest, someone who was on the show recently, Rumboyz Robbie. What's going on, brother?
What's good? What's good? Appreciate you guys having me. Cheers to me. Cheers to you. Shout out to the whole Coaches crew. Let's get it.
Absolutely, guys. So, like I said, we are talking wide receiver and tight end prospects. We'll go over 7 wide receivers, and then we'll get over 3 tight end prospects today and get out of here right before the start of the NFL draft this week here. So, besides other news, Zach Wilson was traded today, so good for him. Interesting that he landed with the Denver Broncos for a late round swap. Maybe
I think the Broncos are just having a disappointing day. They dropped those generic Madden franchise jerseys, and they get Zach Wilson. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, well,
Anything involving Sean Payton is gonna probably be a shit show. Like, let's just be honest.
At this point of his career, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if he knows what he's doing anymore. But enough with that. Again, you have Zach Wilson. Maybe hold on to him a little bit more than he did before, but not really. So let's talk about some real players you're going to want on your fantasy teams in the next week here. So we will start with Rome Odunze, Washington wide receiver here. Last season, 92 receptions, 1,600 yards, 13 touchdowns, and a really big breakout season here. Robbie, since you are a guest, you get to go first on this one. Odunze, how do you feel about him as a wide receiver prospect?
I know that there are, I'm not going to say that it's us, but there are some of our colleagues in the industry that some are even saying that Odunze is at the top of their board. I think Odunze is perfect as probably the wide receiver 3 out of this class. Of course, with Neighbors and Harrison Jr. above him. Wherever he lands, it's gonna be a solid fit. We know pretty much what's gonna happen with 1 and 2 for them, but we don't know. But we have an idea. Odunze's unique because 1, wherever he goes, he's likely to probably be the go-to guy. 2, it's really just a matter of landing spot for us, and seeing what happens there. I have a feeling that once landing spot is accomplished, once that's achieved, you're probably going to see people reach up for him in drafts, whether he ends up as a New York Jet to be the 2 to Garrett Wilson or whatever the case may be. I'm excited for Rome Odunze. And shout out to the Huskies. They had a damn good season last year.
They sure did. Very good season. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Odunze?
Yeah, I like Rome. Kind of like Robbie said, he's the perfect wide receiver 3. If you're sitting in the spot to take a wide receiver as a wide receiver 3, you're not missing out on – you're not settling on drafting someone like Rome. He's someone that, when you look at the mock drafts, you always kind of see those mock locks as it is, those guys that in every mock draft you just see – obviously we have number 1 overall. Every one of them is going to have Caleb Williams, right? But just about every mock that I've seen for the past couple months has Rome Odunze going to 9 or going at 9 to the Chicago Bears. Yeah. And I like the landing spot just because of how loaded I want to say the Bears passing attack looks like. Like we've seen kind of what their running back game is, and it isn't anything that's going to take a focal point away from the passing game, especially with DJ Moore that's already there, adding Keenan Allen, supposedly adding Rome Odunze, and if every mock drafter is correct, adding Caleb Williams back there at quarterback, who I think has some more arm talent than Justin Fields. He might not be an immediate producer in that sense. If he does end up going somewhere like Chicago, just because of the talent of veterans above him, he's not going to walk into a room like he would, say, with the New York Giants if they ended up taking a
God, please
shot
don't
on him at 6.
Please don't let that happen.
But-
I know that it will happen, but I pray that none of these receivers end up as a New York Giant.
Hopefully the Giants just trade back to like the 7th round and just don't touch anyone that we care about.
Yeah, please.
Maybe they take a quarterback.
Rome's a fantastic 3. If he ends up in Chicago, I'm still excited about him. I'm excited about the development of him coming in with that rookie quarterback and the chemistry that they can build and being able to learn from guys like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen who've been in the league and who've done it before. There are some things that Rome could improve on, and those are some things that he could be led to there. But a lot of the NFL comps that I've seen for him, I always take NFL comps with a grain of salt, but the most consistent one I've seen for Rome is Larry Fitzgerald.
Ooh, I like that.
And while I don't see Rome being as consistently a star as Larry Fitzgerald was, at least at this point right now, that's definitely something that he could mature into. They have the same sort of play style. They have those, vice grip hands. I'm pretty sure Larry Fitzgerald had more tackles in his career than drops. And that could be what Rome Odunze is. And so, there's a couple things he can improve on, a couple things getting around, kind of using his speed better. And in terms of his route running, getting around receivers and around corners instead of trying to go up and beat them on the 50-50 balls, which he can do. But Rome's a guy I'd be, extremely happy taking as the 3rd skill guy off the board, possibly 4th if you're in a tight end premium and you don't have one of the elite tight ends. But Rome at your 3rd wide receiver off the board is not anything to feel upset about.
I like that. Yeah. He's got an interesting opportunity compared to Neighbors and Harrison because where he's falling into the draft, not falling per se, but where he's landing, there could definitely be potential for playoff caliber teams to want to go up there and get into that top 10 there and get Dunze on the back end there, someone who can be a wide receiver 1 for a playoff team with his abilities, his route running, with his ball skills, with his ability to do things after the catch. He comes in as a potential prototypical wide receiver 1 for any NFL team. And if you get him in fantasy and he lands in, and I don't think any situation at this point won't be that bad, you should be real thrilled to get this guy on your team there.
One of the things that I want to touch on really quick, Coach Tyler did mention, hey, it could possibly be landing to the Bears at 9. It would be amazing if all of our mocks were correct, but they do need a pass rusher, so that'll be interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, that'd be true. They consistently have him taking a wide receiver and almost no matter what, but the NFL draft is a special night for things that go out of control. So, all right, on to the next wide receiver here, guys. Now, obviously for a lot of people, the 101 for a lot of wide receivers, maybe rookie drafts or whatever it may be. But Marvin Harrison Jr., if you don't know the name, obviously Marvin Harrison Sr. used to play in the NFL years ago. So if you didn't know that, definitely need to work on your football facts there. But Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, 67 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I love Marvin Harrison Jr. He's my 101. And he's just the guy, right? There's all this talk about him being, the most NFL ready prospect in this draft, the best receiver we've seen prospect wise since, some people go to Jamar Chase, some people even push it farther back. But, I was talking with Coach Steve before we jumped on tonight. And, when I'm battling out for those top 2, top 3 positions, and I'm trying to see who I want to rank as those guys, I'm someone that likes to take polish over potential sometimes, especially at the top end of that draft. And Marvin Harrison he's polished, but he's still potential, right? He has the namesake. We're going to get into another legendary receiver son later in our show today. But if you didn't know that Marvin Harrison Jr. was Marvin Harrison's son, then we got to work on
Living
something
under a rock.
because it's right there. But
You're living on a rock and you never played Madden as a kid.
But you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and he just does everything so well, right? He has the size. He was at the combine. I'm at 6'3", 209 at the combine, right? 9.5-inch hands. He's got good hand size, just under 32-inch arm length. So he's got the size that you want, right? He's been projected as the number one receiver off the board basically the entire season and the entire offseason. He's got speed. He's a fantastic route runner. He understands playing well. He was raised by let me pull up the Marvin Harrison stat right here. So Marvin Harrison Sr., Super Bowl champion with Peyton Manning. He was raised by an 8-time Pro Bowler and Pro Football Hall of Famer, right? If you want someone to teach you about how to play the receiver position well, getting Marvin Harrison Sr. as a dad is a great way to start, right? But we also see, Ohio State is stacked at receiver. They always have this great game plan for their passing game, right? So last year, his freshman year, we didn't see a ton of him just because of that loaded room. We had Chris Olave, we had Garrett Wilson, we had Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? Last year, Marvin Harrison goes out, puts up 77 receptions, over 1,250 yards and 14 touchdowns with future rookie of the year, CJ Stroud, right? Number 2 overall talent at the quarterback position. He's set right there. And so the question coming into this past season was, what's Marvin Harrison going to do with not CJ Stroud, right? And he gets Kyle McCord, who, I'm sorry if you're an Ohio State fan. I'm sorry if you're a Kyle McCord fan. He is not and never will be CJ Stroud. And what does Marvin do? He puts up 67 receptions, 1,211 yards, and another 14 touchdowns. So he loses 10 receptions on the year. He puts up just under or just over 50 yards less on those 10 receptions lost and the same number of touchdowns. This guy could produce with me throwing him the ball at quarterback, right? And so him going to play with Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert or whoever that first, 4 through 6 picks shakes out, he's going to be fine. And I think he's going to live up to the hype that is behind him, right? And we'll get into it, but Marvin Harrison is one of those rare guys whenever we have, these Hall of Famer sons come in to play the same sport as they did. Often the expectation is, you have to be what your dad was, right? That's the whole thing going on with Bronny and LeBron right now. Yeah. And some people might say, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's got the exact same name, right? So could be nepotism, could be whatever it is, right? This guy is a dog. And analysts are now saying before he's even taken a snap in the pros that he has the potential to be better than his father, who, again, was an 8-time Pro Bowler and is a Hall of Famer, right? So if you want to talk polish versus potential, he's got both. He's got the polish of being just almost the most complete receiver that you can see coming out of a draft, but he's got the potential, and he might even have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder to say, hey, people are expecting me to be Marvin Harrison Sr., but I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do better than what my dad did, right? So he's locked in as my 101. We're hoping that something happens. The Cardinals said they're opening to trade pick 4. Hopefully they trade pick 4 and he ends up with Justin Herbert in Los Angeles. That would be my dream scenario that actually has a chance of happening.
I would love it if he were a Charger. It's not exactly, from a fantasy football standpoint, it's not exactly the most sexy thing when your wide receiver one's probably going to be Joshua Palmer. When you talk about that offense within itself, I pray that he ends up as an Arizona Cardinal. For some reason, I have dreams of him and pause, no Diddy, him and Kyler Murray, just being in sync together, really taking that offense to new heights. You mentioned Larry Fitzgerald, Larry Fitzgerald, one-time great Cardinal, probably the greatest Cardinal of that franchise's history. Only thing that I would caution with in terms of the whole name value narrative we all remember Thaddeus. We all remember Thaddeus Moss, and we all remember how the hell that ended up. Okay, so I'd caution, maybe just putting the pressure on young Marv that his dad has, but I mean he's already lived up to that. He's already exceeded that. I'm hearing like you just said, Arizona potentially trading back. Hearing it could potentially be the Jets that maybe make that move. I wouldn't do that if I'm the Jets. You guys need a freaking tight end, so you need to be going after Brock Bowers. We'll talk about later. I think that he's a perfect fit for Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to argue here. I mean, I have him as my wide receiver too because, unlike Coach Tyler, I like potential over polished. Slightly. It's very, very close. It's like a centimeter between him and Malik Neighbors for me. But Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, there's really not much to say about him. I mean, I would have loved to see him do a little bit more with the ball after the catch. Again, these are little things that I saw on film. When he has to deal with grabby coverage, kind of get thrown off his route at times. Had dealt with some drops in 2023. I don't know if he has that elite speed to consistently blow past, cornerbacks at the NFL level. But again, these are little things that I don't really think will be much of an issue for him at the next level. But those were some things, if you're looking to make him more human, not this amazing generational talent at wide receiver, those are some things that I saw while watching film on him. But everything else is just fantastic. He's basically one of the best wide receivers I've watched over the last 4 years I've been doing it. So fantastic wide receiver. All right, next up, Ladd McConkey from Georgia here. Last season, 30 receptions, 478 yards, 2 touchdowns, another touchdown on the ground. Robbie, how do you feel about Ladd?
You mean mini Cooper Cup? Mini Cooper Cup?
Mini Cooper Cup, yeah.
I enjoy Ladd McConkey, to be honest. Landing spot, I feel like is definitely yet to be determined. What I've been noticing across the industry, whether it's mocks or just people just generally dropping their takes, no one knows. Like no one really knows. Like it's not like Marvin Harrison or Neighbors, or Doomsday. We're like, okay, like these are one of the 3 teams that he'll absolutely end up on. I see a lot of people probably being ticked off come draft night with Ladd McConkey, wondering where is he going to end up, who takes him, is he going to be a first round grab? I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't
Probably
know.
not.
I don't think that he'll be a first round grab. But I do see this as a value pick. I do see this as what we call over on my channel, the Rumboyz Fantasy Network, we call them diamonds in the rough. I do see this being a diamond in the rough pick. What that means is how you guys ended up with Puka Nacua last year. And, we were like, hey, you guys might want to key in on Puka. Maybe you want to grab Puka. I think that we're going to be having that same discussion with Ladd McConkey. Gets in and out of his breaks really, really well. Super smooth route runner. Probably in terms of just running routes, probably one of the best receivers in this class at that. Like I said, I love the way he gets in and out of his breaks. Wherever he ends up, wherever he falls, they're gonna end up with the gem. So I'm super excited for Ladd.
All right, Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Ladd?
Yeah, like we talked about last week, sometimes you kind of put a player into the hole of being a slot receiver, and sometimes that diminishes their value and it's sort of a dig at them. And sometimes you put a player into the hole of being a slot receiver because they just do everything that a slot receiver would do well. And that's exactly who Ladd McConkey is, right? He's going to be, I think, an extremely well-versed slot receiver in the league, right? He's got good size, sitting at 6 foot, 186 pounds, so he's not undersized at all. He's a fantastic route runner. He isn't great on the deep ball, and part of that could have been, receiving passes from Stetson Bennett and Carson Beck, but some of that also does fall under him. But he's he's a fantastic route runner. He's a smart player. Like, you talk about football IQ. He's one of those guys that he can break down in his zone really well. He understands how to manipulate both himself and a defender to get open. He's not the strongest player, so I don't see him playing outside a ton, just fighting with some more physical corners. There's some guys that might be playing off coverage that he'll be able to kind of toy with, but he's going to be, in my mind, a great slot receiver, and that's not bad at all. We've seen the emphasis that teams have put on playing great receivers in their slot and how productive those players can be playing from that position where you're not going up against the number one corner on a team, sort of playing around with who is where and how to beat defensive coordinators. And Ladd McConkey is going to be a guy that gives defensive coordinators headaches for what I would presume is his career, right? He's a good guy. He's a good slot receiver. He's got speed, fantastic route runner. He's got good enough hands to get through everything. He's someone that I've seen has kind of risen up boards a little too high for me. I've seen him going as high as like wide receiver 4 or 5 in some crazy mocks, some crazy fantasy mocks. But I think he's going to be a great, day 2 guy, whether that's late second round, early third round, maybe even early second if people are really buying into him. But I like him. I think his price in fantasy drafts is a little too high for me right now, depending on where you look. But that could also continue to rise depending on landing spot, and that could also plummet depending on landing spot.
I could see Tennessee maybe grabbing him.
Yeah,
don't like that.
I don't like it, but I mean,
they need a slot receiver for sure there. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm just being, but I gotta be honest,
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. I like Ladd McConkey a lot. I have him as my wide receiver 8 right now on the board. I loved what I was able to watch on film: the speed, the route running, the quickness, what he's able to do with the ball in his hand once he has it. There was so much times you watched on film that his ability to just change direction and just gain up big yards. It was unbelievable to watch there. Again, yeah, he comes in with a skinny frame. Play strength is definitely something to be concerned about there. But if you get the ball into this guy's hand, I mean, he is going to make things happen at the NFL level there. And again, he dealt with injuries this year. His college production doesn't show like superstar level. He might not probably will never reach superstar level, but being a really strong wide receiver 2 at the NFL level, I could definitely see him doing that in the future, especially if he gets to play in the slot for the most of his career. So I like McCaffrey a lot there. So, all right, on to the next wide receiver, Keon Coleman from Florida State, not Michigan State. He used to go to Michigan State, but this past season here with Florida State, 50 receptions, 658 yards, 11 touchdowns. Coach Tyler, we'll start you off. Tell us about Coleman.
Yeah, Keon Coleman, I think, has really great size for a receiver. He's 6'3", 213 at the combine. He was a big benefactor of what Florida State was with Jordan Travis. Spent 2 years at Michigan State. He was an honorable mention for all Big Ten his last year at Michigan State, so 2022. And then he walks into the ACC and kind of lights it on fire, right? He was a great returner too, which is something that we talked about last week, can really be helpful depending on what the new kickoff rules look like, how teams view that. But also, he's just a dominant receiver, right? We see 50 receptions for 658 and 11 touchdowns, so he's averaging just under a touchdown a game. He's got the great size. He is someone that can get bullied a little bit off the line and through his breaks. I don't think it's necessarily him being undersized as much as him just not necessarily knowing how to get through those as well. He isn't – I don't think personally he's fantastic in the 50-50 game. He does have the size, but he doesn't – get up and grab it. He kind of tries to depend on his size more than being an athlete and going to get it. But he is an extremely athletic player. I don't have him overly high in my rankings either. I have him above Lad McConkey, so I will say that. But, again, he's a guy that I've seen going, receiver 4, receiver 5. And I personally didn't see enough to keep him that high. I'd drop him down into the late single digits or even somewhere around receiver 10, just depending on the day and how I'm feeling. But he does have sort of that Malik Neighbors mentality that I talked about last week of, I can run right by you. I could do things to get better in my route running, but I'm just going to go up and try and catch the ball over you. And I think that that's sort of how he approaches his game.
Mm-hmm.
And if he improves on his route running, like we talked about with Neighbors, if he improves on handling his speed well and being able to manipulate those different gears, I think he could be a great receiver. I think he could be a good receiver. I won't say great. He's another day 2 guy for me, just because of the name and what he's done. But he's a guy that does have to improve in some areas before I feel really confident, especially depending on his landing spot, if he doesn't have a quarterback that can help to throw him open as well as some in the league.
That's fair. I like that.
I agree with that. There's a lot of when looking at his film, it's a lot of circus catches. It's a lot of circus grabs. A lot of the separation comes from him on the slant route where he's able to create that separation. Where a lot of times it's pretty much just him and a safety one-on-one. So that is something that I do worry about. He'll be great in blocking schemes. I don't think that this is a prospect that you want to go after in fantasy football drafts just yet. Landing spot's gonna be very interesting, very, very unique. I like him. I like him better on special teams. I think he's gonna have to work his way up through special teams before he's actually on a full set of snaps on the offensive side of the ball. Has great size, speed's not there.
Nope.
Like he runs. He ran a 4.6. That's what I was running at 28 years old. I'm now 32. So that kind of worries me there. I think it's all going to be. This is a player that's super landing spot dependent.
Yeah.
If he ends up with maybe like a Lamar Jackson, maybe he takes over the Bateman role. And maybe it's a Keon Coleman, Zay Flowers type of show in Baltimore. But I mean, it's Keon Coleman stuff. I have him being the faller of the draft. He will probably fall the most out of any player in this draft.
Yeah, I can see that. I have him as my wide receiver 10 right now. Again, there were some cool things about him. The jump balls, the crazy catches that he was able to make. All that was fun to watch on film, obviously. And then I think he does have like a sneaky yards after catch kind of ability to his game, where it's not really speed he's breaking away, but really just kind of just breaking tackles and getting his yardage that way. But again, there were other things. A lot of times you're watching him run routes, the separation wasn't really there a lot. The footwork was kind of sloppy. The deep speed really wasn't there to beat out a defender going deep at all. He did rely a lot of his times on, I'm going to catch this ball over somebody else and we'll see what happens. So again, there's some things that he needs to work on. And I think, like Robbie said, the right team, it will be very important for Coleman at the next level here. So he's probably going to be a day 3 pick, maybe day 2 if a team really likes him. But I wasn't overly impressed with him. But, I mean, there was definitely enough there on tape where it's like there's definitely something there. It just needs to be worked on more. All right, on to the next wide receiver, Troy Franklin here. Troy Franklin, Oregon. If I had his numbers in front of me, they're here. Last season, 81 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 14 touchdowns, and a big breakout season here for Oregon. Troy Franklin. Robbie, how do you feel about Troy Franklin?
I love Troy Franklin. Did the combine hurt him? Absolutely, it did. There's no denying that. I'm probably higher on Troy Franklin than most. I feel like whatever team he lands on, he's gonna be he's gonna be a problem for opposing coordinators to deal with right out the gate. I've been seeing some people mock him to my Commanders, which I would be completely okay with him being, you know, like a 1A, 1B to Terry McLaurin. I don't really care as much about the combine probably as most people. And I don't think that it should affect him as much as it has. Gives me Olave vibes. He very much gives me Chris Olave vibes. So I like that. I mean, on top of that, he's also a Cali kid. So, you know, I gotta throw some extra support there. 14 receiving TDs last year. What else is there to say about the kid? Bo Nix is not Bo Nix without Troy Franklin being Troy Franklin. He has an amazing frame. You can go up there and get it. Pretty good speed. Pretty damn good speed. He's a fast shifty receiver. Super talented after the catch. I love this guy after the catch. Once the ball is in his hands, he's going to take off like a rocket. So I love that about his game. Hopefully he ends up with the Commanders. If he ends up with the Commanders, I like that. You know, that 50-50 jump ball scenario that he'll probably be finding himself in pretty often with a rookie QB behind center. I like him going to a team where there already is an established one to be able to help him be even better and help get him open and show him the ropes of the NFL. So, you know, with McLaurin heading into a 6th year, I can see him being a great mentor for Franklin. I can see Franklin being a really great wide receiver too, and definitely worth grabbing for your fantasy football rosters.
I like it. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Franklin?
Yeah, you know, Troy Franklin, like I talked about, I'm a Texas Tech grad, so I have nightmares of Troy Franklin and what he did to our defense this past season. I watched that game, and he would get the ball, and it was like no one on the field could catch him. And I didn't understand it, and it honestly frustrated me. And I think that that's going to continue to be a theme throughout his career. That's exactly what it looked like for most of this season. He's a little bit on that slender side, you know, 6'2", 176 at the combine. Like Robbie talked about, the combine didn't help him as much as it may have hurt him. But he is a real good route runner. He's got incredible footwork. That's one thing that I really like to see. Both through his routes and also in the open field, right? He's able to sort of hit those crossovers like a basketball player and just send receivers or send defenders into the other hash marks because he's just throwing it down. But he is a guy that I do see as a wide receiver 2 on a team. I just don't think, at least at this point, he's at the place in his career to take over as a wide receiver 1, like some other receivers were coming into their drafts. You know, that slender frame, again, we talk about sort of play strength, playing through contact. There can be times in his film that you see him sort of get pushed around, not handle physicality well, but also most of the times he's fast enough to get away from those physical corners and secondary players that are covering him. But he is a guy that I think is talented. He's sitting right in there in my, you know, my 5 to 6-ish range in the receivers. Again, you know, with every receiver that we talk about, landing spot can help or hurt all of them as we go through the draft. There's very few people that are immune to landing spots for fantasy. And I don't think that, you know, there's maybe 1 or 2 with Neighbors and Harrison and maybe Odunze in this draft that I wouldn't even say are immune to it, but we don't worry as much. Yep. You know, if Malik Neighbors goes to the Giants or if Ladd McConkey goes to the Giants, we see those in 2 different lights. So Troy Franklin is going to be a guy that his landing spot is going to move him up or down boards. But at the same time, he is going to hopefully slot into a team as a wide receiver 2 or as a young 3 who's going to be able to command the 2 spot as he matures over the next couple seasons. And he's going to be, you know, I think he's going to be a fairly good receiver in the NFL.
Just hang on to the damn ball, Troy.
Yeah. You need to do that for sure. All right. Over to our promos real quick. Obviously, if we've been, a lot of us, at least me and Tyler, you know, if you're understanding why we're getting our film review from, it's with Dynasty Nerds. They have a fantastic film room there over there with Dynasty Nerds. If you use our promo code COACH, you get access to their film room. You get access to the Dynasty Nerds GM. A lot of cool things going on over there at Dynasty Nerds. But the film room was something that if you want to learn about these prospects and evaluate them yourselves, fantastic place to go. And, of course, if you're getting ready for your rookie drafts this coming week here or next week, whatever it is, did it. Fantastic app that I use to help fantasy owners, with lineup decisions, with roster strategies, with drafting. And I'll be on, obviously, all week. If you just look for my name, it's right on there on the screen there. And, yeah. All right. Over to the next wide receiver, Brendan Rice, another famous son coming into the NFL here from USC here. Last season, 45 receptions, 791 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Coach Tyler, you had some questions about Rice. Talk about Rice.
Yeah. So, we talked about there's two sides of the coin with being the son of a, Hall of Famer of a legend. And we have we have Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top of this draft, and we have Brendan Rice at the not top of this draft, right? So that last name, if you can't put it together, we're talking about bloodlines here. He is the son of Jerry Rice. Most people's GOAT at the receiver position in the league. And so there's a lot to live up to, right? And Brendan Rice, he's not someone that I see going overly high in the draft. He's honestly someone that I see as either a late day 2 or possibly a day 3 receiver. He's got pretty good size, 6'2", just under 210. So he's not, small by any means. And he was an insane touchdown threat at USC, right? We talk about a touchdown a game last season, averaging wise. He is capable as a receiver, but he's not going to walk into an NFL franchise and outside of the namesake demand a lot, right? He is able to sort of work through his routes and understand how to play scramble drill. He did it very well with Caleb Williams. We see so much of his improvisation is what attracts people to him, and Brendan Rice was a big beneficiary of that because he understood how to get back to the quarterback. But he doesn't do anything really well enough for me to be overly excited about him. He's a guy that I look at. He would be one of your later picks in your rookie drafts. There's a chance, depending on where he ends up, that he's not in your rookie draft at all, outside of, maybe a 49ers fan really loving that he's Jerry Rice's kid. But he's just not someone that overly excites me. He's on the other side of the coin as a Marvin Harrison Jr. You do like that he was raised up by,
By Jerry,
the greatest,
by
the greatest receiver of the NFL's history. But outside of that, there's nothing that leads me to believe that he's going to be outstanding in the league. And that in turn makes me believe that he's not going to be outstanding for fantasy. He could be a touchdown threat, but outside of, hoping that he ends up in the end zone, I don't absolutely love the idea of him ending up on my team.
Rice is interesting for the simple fact to where, let's say you target him 5 times out of a game, which obviously he's not going to get that type of work in the NFL. But let's say you target him five times out of a game. One of those catches is going to be a touchdown. He has the ability to find those soft spaces in the zone, which, like you mentioned, Tyler, was him being able to come back to the quarterback and be able to be the benefactor for Caleb Williams. He's gonna have to be able to maintain separation. He does have, he is pretty top heavy, so I think that'll allow him the ability, and especially press man situations where he can bully opposing corners. I don't want to say that I'm necessarily on the other side of the coin. I think that what we're seeing here with Rice is because it's Jerry Rice. Let's face it, Jerry Senior was significantly, way better than any other receiver throughout his playing days. Way more consistent than any other receiver in his playing days. And I'm a Randy Moss fan. I feel like with like a Marvin Harrison Jr., we're not putting that exact same pressure just because it's okay, well, it's like Marvin Harrison Jr. or it's Marvin Harrison Sr. that you're kind of living up to, yada yada yada. Whereas it's like you're freaking Jerry Rice's son. Like when we talk about Raiders, you're Jerry Rice's son. So the level of expectation is significantly greater. There's links of him possibly going to the 49ers. We've seen, I've heard people calling for him to go down to Duval. I wouldn't be shocked if while we're all sitting here and we're on the fence about Rice, I wouldn't be shocked if he does come in the league and absolutely sets it on fire. I would not be shocked at all. There's something there that I can't put my finger on that shows that he can be successful at the next level. I can't exactly put my finger on it. Maybe it is me leaning into the nepotism a little bit. But, I mean, hey, it is what it is. I think Rice is going to be excellent at the next level. And I have no problems from a fantasy standpoint. I have no problems letting him fall to me. This is a player from a strategy standpoint when you're drafting, you can let him fall to you. And you'll be A-okay. You don't need to worry about reaching or anything like that. Just sit in the draft room, be silent, and then just silently pull him off the board. Don't make any noise, don't do anything, don't attract any attention to yourselves. Go after him, be a silent sniper in that draft room.
Don't wear your Jerry Rice jersey at the draft.
Yeah, don't do that. No. Yeah, don't be that guy. It's like, well, I know who you're picking now. Yeah.
Definitely a fantastic takes, guys. All right, over to the Knicks wide receiver here. Brian Thomas Jr., LSU, 2023 stats, 68 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 17 touchdowns, which I believe led all FBS last season here. Robbie, Brian Thomas Jr., do you like him?
I'm more of a when we look at that LSU offense, I'm more of a neighbors guy.
I like it.
Don't get me wrong, Brian Thomas is amazing, but he gives me one trick pony type vibes. And I worry about that a little bit. You're not going to be as open down the field as you were at LSU. This is the NFL. I get that the SEC is probably the closest thing to the NFL, in terms of when we talk about college, but I don't see that happening for Brian Thomas Jr. This is one that I'm probably I would rate myself as average or maybe a little bit lower than consensus throughout the industry. I just worry about the one trick pony. I mean, the dude only runs like sevens and above. I do not. When I look at Brian Thompson's film, I'm not seeing a lot of those smaller routes, which makes me feel like he might just be a down the field threat. But he's physical. He's a big guy. He'll get out there and he'll get dirty. I want to see how this one shakes out before I lay too heavy of an indictment on Brian Thomas Jr.
I like it. I heard somebody on Twitter say that he's like DK Metcalf, but less creative, which I thought that was a nice, clear image of Brian Thomas. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Thomas?
See, I label him as like Gabe Davis Jr. He's not Brian Thomas Jr. He's Gabe Davis Jr. But, I kind of second what Robbie said there at the end. There's some guys in the draft that I'd rather pay up for in the future and know what I'm getting than pay the price tag that they are now and risk missing out on it. So Brian Thomas Jr. has been, at least from what I've seen in consensus, fantasy ADP and a lot of mock drafts for the actual NFL draft, he's going off the board as the wide receiver 4. And for someone with his play style, I don't want to pay a wide receiver 4 price tag for that. Now, if he goes out in his rookie season and has this amazing development and becomes this star, wide receiver 2, then I would rather pay up a little bit more than the price I would have paid in the draft, knowing, hey, this is the commodity that I'm getting, and this is what I know he's going to be in the league. Not let me try and project it from his one season of success and then, maybe miss out on whatever my first round pick is for this year. But, we do see really kind of one season of success. His first season back in 2021 at LSU, 28 receptions for 359 and 2 touchdowns. 2022, 31 receptions, 361 and 5 touchdowns. And then this past year, setting the league on fire, just under 1,200 yards and 17 touchdowns. He's always been a long play guy, and that really did get unlocked this year with Heisman, Jaden Daniels, and wide receiver 1/2 Malik Neighbors on the other side of him. But he doesn't do a ton well. He'll run by you extremely well. There is a tweet that came out. It had sort of one play of Brian Thomas and one play of Malik Neighbors going back and forth. And it was like, Brian Thomas, I'll just run right by you and score. And then Malik Neighbors, let me do a backflip and catch this ball over you. But that's what Brian Thomas Jr. does well, is he just runs by you, right? He plays physical. He can go up and get the ball. But I relate him to Gabe Davis because I see him as the perfect guy when the Bills are backed up on the 2-yard line for Josh Allen to just take a step and just throw the ball up in the air, and he'll just take it 98 yards like Gabe Davis did. And what scares me about Brian Thomas is that that's what his career is going to be in fantasy, is exactly like Gabe Davis, where one game he'll have, 2 70-plus yard touchdowns and put up 30, 40 fantasy points for you. And then he'll go 2 or 3 games with 2 receptions for 12 yards. And then, you kind of wait for that boom game again. I think he'll be a really good best ball guy, but dynasty wise, I'm not going to buy into him until I know what he is in the league. And he's one of those guys that I'm okay waiting to pay a higher price tag for if he turns out to be what people think that he is. But I'd let other people take the risk with their first round pick and see if he's a bust or if he booms. And if he booms, I'll figure out how to get him on my team if I really wanted him that bad going into this draft.
He needs to be on an offense where there's already an established one, where and that one already has chemistry with that quarterback. I don't think that he can go to a team and have to be the perennial guy. He needs assistance to be able to do what he does best, which is stretch the field and get open.
Yeah. He's one of the ultimate boom or bust wide receivers in this class year with the tremendous upside, but the low floor is it's scary to watch there with him. And unfortunately, he might end up in a situation that is going to boost his draft stock up because of the landing spot, which, again, you guys kind of mentioned could end up being a mistake if you end up drafting him in your rookie drafts. But we'll have to wait and see. All right, on to the last wide receiver of the night, Devontae Walker. I think we have UNC wide receiver. Did I say his name wrong? I might have said his name wrong.
No, Devontae, you said it right.
Did I say it right? All right, cool.
Yeah.
I've been known for saying names wrong.
He also goes by Tez. So
Tez Walker. Last season, 41 receptions, 699 yards, and 7 touchdowns with UNC. Coach Tyler, talk about Walker.
Yeah, so Devontae Walker is a guy that people do feel very strongly about, partially, as you could see by Robbie's reaction when he pulled him up on the slideshow. 6'1.5", 193. So not bad size, not really overly big or overly tall. Walker made sort of headlines this past year. He spent the first 2 years of his playing career at Kent State, and he did well at Kent State. His second year there, 58 receptions, 921 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And he wanted to be closer to home a little bit. There was something going on with his family. I think it was like his grandmother or something. And he wanted to go be closer to home. So him and the University of North Carolina come to a mutual agreement. You'll be good for us. We'll be good for you. Let's have you, right? And then we get into the season, and the season's about to start. And everyone that thinks that Tez Walker is going to be this great weapon for Drake May he's not out there in game one. And people are kind of, questioning what's going on. And he's not out there in game two. And it starts to come to light that somewhere in the whole transfer waiver process, something got messed up. And the NCAA basically denied his waiver for whatever reason they felt. Right. And so Walker missed just over half the season, or just about half the season, battling to try and even get on the field with the NCAA, right? And social media blew up about it. A lot of people, talking about they want to see Tez on the field. He didn't do anything wrong. He's trying to get closer to his family. He is a big play guy. He is sort of that longer receiver. He has averaged, his first year, he only had 5 receptions at Kent State, averaged 24.8 yards per reception.
Oh my God.
His second year, 58 receptions, averaged 15.9 yards a reception. And then his year at UNC this year, on his 41 receptions that he still had, 17 yards per reception. So he is a big play guy that likes to go downfield, likes to get vertical, right? And sometimes that hurts him more than helps him, depending on the scheme that he's in the defense that he's playing. Because at North Carolina, there wasn't a ton of other attention to be paid to the receivers outside of Tez. So that you can, stick a safety on the side with Walker, and you've got double coverage to really kind of guard if he's going just straight 9 route, if he's going down on a post, whatever it is. But he's just a guy that, we talked about kind of one-trick pony with Brian Thomas. He's like a one-trick pony with 2 or 3 different tricks, right? He does basically the same thing that Brian Thomas does, but he doesn't do it in as well of a light as Brian Thomas does. He's done it longer, but Brian Thomas did it better this past season than Walker has done it. There's just not a ton of polish in his route running. He's just kind of that bigger guy that's going to try and over athlete you and go get the ball. And, we talk about his footwork. He has feet and they sometimes work. But, he doesn't adjust to the ball overly well. He doesn't really get to the catch point as fast and as smooth as you'd like someone to on anything that's not just straight down the field. And he's kind of that guy that we're going to throw into the bucket of Brian Thomas or at least that I would throw in. His draft price isn't near as high as Brian Thomas's is.
No.
But if you're taking Walker with a 3rd or 4th round pick and he ends up in Kansas City and becomes Patrick Mahomes' new favorite target, then I'm willing to go pay a second at the end of the day after the fact to go get him off your team. But he's another one of those guys that, he can be very boom or bust, and I want to see what he is before I invest anything in him. And I think that that's somewhere that some people get kind of skittish, is not taking the guy with their rookie pick and trying to go get him afterwards. But that's honestly a very smart way to play the market sometimes if you're not getting, the wide receiver 1 or 2 of a class. Because at this point, we get after Roma Dunze, and it's a grab bag of who you could get and what they could turn out to be. And so drafts like this, especially with how deep people keep marking this draft as, there's a lot of good receivers, but there's at least a question mark or 2 that come up with all of them.
Yeah.
And with that, this is a draft where if I'm not getting Marv, I'm not getting Malik, or I'm not getting Rome, I'll pay the after the fact price to know which receivers are going to pan out and which ones aren't.
That's fair. Robbie, how do you feel about Walker?
So I'm like 50-50 on Walker. I feel like maybe this is just, like, hey, like I've just watched too much film. I've, studied too many players at this point in my career, but I feel like he is going to need to go into a situation where there is going to be a mentor to be able to kind of help, polish up some of the footwork, be able to help, show him different techniques to be able to get in and out of breaks a lot quicker. Walker's, for the most part, like he's just going to excuse me, holy shit. He's just going to try and out athlete opposing DBs. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, but it's a super good thing. It worries me. He's going to have to go to, kind of like Tyler was saying, hey, like maybe he ends up like Kansas City. I'm more along the lines of like, hey, like, hopefully you end up in Buffalo, which sucks. There's not going to be really anyone there to teach him anything. But I mean, at least you have Josh Allen, who's going to throw you open, who's going to help you do what you do best for Tez Walker, which is contested catch scenarios. When the pressure is on, and the pressure was always on at UNC because they had no offensive line, Drake May had to get rid of that ball as quick as possible. When pressure is on, he thrives. He thrives, and he's able to really showcase his skill set. I worry on maybe some of those plays where, hey, like the ball ain't coming to you, but you still need to do some work off the ball. I worry about kind of situations like that. Can he even be utilized as a decoy even? Those are kind of things that I worry about. I want to see him adjust to tracking the ball a little bit better on deep route scenarios. I think that's something that we saw at UNC that kind of maybe struggled a little bit. But again, this was UNC that he was playing for. Like, I'm pretty confident that if he went to like a more well-known football program, we'd be looking at him and talking about him in a different light. Not necessarily going to one of the premier schools, having to, play in an offense where everything was essentially like, hurry up, get open, and I'm gonna get you the ball because I have no offensive line to be able to help me be successful as a quarterback. I think that that is something that helps him. We'll see. The footwork worries me. The ball tracking worries me. But I love him in contested catch scenarios. It's almost like he needs someone to be draped all over him in order for him to be successful, which is weird.
I love it. All right, guys. Heading over to the tight end position here. The first tight end we're talking about tonight is Ja'Tavion Sanders, tight end out of Texas. Last season, Sanders had 45 receptions, 682 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Robbie, you start us off with the tight ends here. How do you feel about Sanders as a tight end?
Everyone's like Brock Bowers. I'm like, we're just going to completely overlook Sanders. I love Sanders. I'm hoping that he ends up in Indianapolis. All of those tight ends aren't the greatest. You want to talk about an offense where he could probably really, really flourish. I feel like Anthony Richardson getting him the ball in Indy is perfect. We saw, boom games by Grandson and Mo Alley Cox and, so on and so forth. I think that this is a very consistent option for them. And especially with the way they like to utilize the run game, so on and so forth. Sanders can definitely, be utilized in those blocking scenarios, but he can also come off a block and get open. So I'm pretty high on Sanders. He's kind of really the only tight end prospect that I care about that's not named Brock Bowers.
I like it. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about Sanders?
Yeah, Sanders was my tight end 2 going into the offseason. Him and Sinnott, which we talked about last week, have been flipping between 2 and 3. Sanders is a kid that I've watched since high school, being, Texas high school football. He was at a great program in Denton Ryan, multiple state championships. He was a big part of that. And, watching him go to Texas hurt me as a Texas Tech guy. But Ja'Tavion Sanders reminds me a lot of kind of how people view Dalton Kincaid coming into the draft. He's this guy that can play in line, but he has that skill to go play out wide. He can stretch out into the slot if he needs to. There was a couple plays, if I'm remembering right, that Texas was throwing him on the outside too and like actually targeting him. But he is a really good pass catcher. He's a really good route runner. There's some things that he could tighten up in his route running, but he's able to go get the ball. And he was utilized a lot in that Texas offense. You know, we see his 2 years of production, 54 and 45 receptions, over 600 yards both years, an average of 11.4 and 15.2 yards per reception. So he's getting downfield and he's making things happen. His blocking is something that could be worked on a little bit, just a little inconsistent with how he went to the attack point, how he met defenders as a blocker, but also we don't get fantasy points for blocking. So as long as he's on the field, he's going to be utilized, right? And so Sanders is a guy that I really like. He's a guy that if he, you know, the allure of Brock Bowers is going to draw people to him and they're not going to study tight ends as well. And there's a lot of places in the draft where Jatavian Sanders is sitting there, and I like what he can put up more than some of the receivers that would be out there. There's some of the running backs around that ADP. And so I would be willing to take the shot on a receiving forward tight end in fantasy where we get points for receiving tight ends.
I like it. I hope he lands with Miami. That'd be fantastic for me to have.
He's being mocked here.
I know. I'm excited.
You don't want Gesicki there still?
Yeah, he's not there.
He's not there, yeah.
Or no, he's with New England now, right?
Yeah.
He's with the Bengals now.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Hey, he hit that gritty, and it was just all downhill from there.
It sure was. Over to our next tight end prospect here, Tanner McLaughlin. Thank you, from Arizona. Last season, 2023, 45 receptions, 528 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Tyler, how do you feel about McLaughlin?
I like McLaughlin. I don't have him necessarily rated as high as some guys outside of tight end premium leagues, but McLaughlin has really good size. You know, 6'5", 245. He could add some weight just being at the tight end position, but he is a good tight end. He's not going to crack that top 3 for me anytime soon, but he is a guy that I could be looking at, you know, very late round 4 or even as one of those post-draft waiver wire ads to just throw on the taxi and see what he develops into. You know, start his career at Southern Utah, so he is a little bit on the older side. You know, redshirted his freshman year in 2018, so we've got some age under there. But he is a good receiver. There's some inconsistencies that kind of drive me away from him and then also pull me in closer to wanting to draft him. You know, we talked about blocking. He's not the greatest blocker. He is able to kind of work downfield and move up to the next level, but he doesn't really control that well. And you can kind of read his routes very well. Like you can look at when he's going to break and you can tell exactly what he's going to do because he doesn't necessarily have those fiery feet coming out of breaks or really going through breaks at all. But he is someone that has shown consistent growth in his receiving, at least in his time at Arizona. You know, we see, let me pull up the stats real quick. So we see his first year at Arizona, 34 receptions, 456 and 2 touchdowns. And then this past season, 45 for 528 and 4 touchdowns. So we see the progression, we see the growth, we see that they wanted to get him more involved in the offense. I just think that he's going to have to tighten up a lot of things in his game to really demand a starting or overly active role in the NFL. But he is someone that can mature into that player.
That's fair. I like that. Robbie, how do you feel about the Arizona tight end?
Back up. I think we're going to see him, you know, at least I'm being completely honest.
That's fair. I love it.
I think that we're going to see him, more of a special teams kind of guy, or like that backup kind of a role. The way that we see like a Russell Dwelly utilized, where it's like, oh, like I completely forgot that you were on this roster, because you're overshadowed by like George Kittle. Like, I think that we see that with McLaughlin. Probably utilize more so on blocking schemes. He could probably learn from maybe I don't know his background, but he could probably learn from playing a little bit of power forward on the court a little bit, learn how to box out, go up there for those contested catches, going up kind of rebounding exercises almost. I think that'd be able to help him. They're saying that he could be like round 4, round 5. We'll see how that plays out, but
fair.
This tight end class isn't sexy, so to speak. So.
Sure not, especially with the last one here. Last one of the night, guys. Theo Johnson from Penn State. Johnson this past season, 34 receptions, 341 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Robbie, anything to stay on Johnston?
No. I know that there are some people that are actually pretty high on Theo. I think I've seen some people have him as the third or fourth tight end out of this class. Kind of same thing that same words I had about McLaughlin. We're going to have to see how this plays out at the next level.
That's fair. Yeah, a lot of these tight ends are going to be very landing spot situation, draft capital kind of situation for sure. Coach Tyler, any final words on Johnson?
Yeah, Johnson is honestly someone, as I was looking through combine stuff, that rose a lot for me in terms of the NFL aspect. I wouldn't say necessarily in fantasy. He's got great size, 6'6", 260 at the combine, 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands. So he's got the size. He ran a 4.57. So he's got a little movement to him. But he's a potential guy. He's a guy that's going to be a project for teams. He doesn't block overly well for his size, and he doesn't play the receiving game outside of going up and getting the ball over someone all that well. We see that in his 34 receptions for 341. But he's a guy that is going to be, day 3. But he is a project that, you put the clay into the right hands, it'll be molded into something great. And there's a chance that with his size and just raw athleticism, if Theo Johnson ends up in the right place with the right coaching and the right system, it might not be an immediate, but, we could be talking about Theo Johnson in, maybe 2, 3, 4 years as a guy that we're targeting in fantasy because he ended up in the right spot with the right coaches that put him into the right system and really created out of a raw athlete who we need him to be for fantasy for him to be relevant.
I mean, they're saying he could potentially go as high as round 3.
Wow.
So I mean, that's why I was like, I don't have too much, I want to say I want to see this one play out.
That's fair. All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up tonight, guys. That is our part 2 of our wide receivers and tight end prospects there. A lot of fun tonight, guys. Great talk. Great insight on a lot of these prospects here. I'm sure everyone who tuned in loved it. Robbie, of course, my friend, always great having you on. Been a fantastic guest as always. Anything you want to say before you get going tonight?
Download Underdog Fantasy and play Underdog. Yeah. And then check out Rumboyz. But yeah, that's it.
Love it. Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH to sign up. We still got that film room. They're still uploading film over there. We've got mock drafts and everything getting ready for Thursday. And a lot of y'all are going to have a week or 2 before you even draft. And so we've got a lot of content over there getting you ready, kind of priming you for who to take, when to take them, and how we think that they play out. And use code COACH. Go check out Dynasty Nerds. Obviously, we thank y'all for listening to the Fantasy Coaches podcast as well.
Absolutely, guys. And again, we'll be back next Monday. We're actually going to have 2 shows next week, Monday and Thursday. We're going to break down both all 4 positions of the NFL draft and kind of just get everything all given to you guys as soon as possible, because we want to make sure you guys have as much possible information going into your rookie drafts, which for me, a lot of mine starting that Sunday after the draft. So very excited about that. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to hit us up wherever, Twitter, Facebook, hit us up on YouTube under the comments here. And if you have questions on your fantasy draft, we'll help you answer them. Get you guys ready to get to the next level of your dynasty league. So we'll be back next Monday, guys, 6 p.m. once again. Thanks, y'all, for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super duper. How the heck they know the future? Come with me, don't be a loser. Grass is green like Cooper Scoopers. Clueless analysts don't do the half of this. In fact, I'm backing this by asking.